companies trying to do that. Companies trying to be their staff's family. It's like a girl coming to you, knowing you already have a girlfriend and asking to be a girlfriend again. A good manager is someone who is task-centric. A good leader who is someone who is people-centric. And someone who you should work under is someone who is good at both. Understanding your personality helps you understand where you're most comfortable in. Let's say if I were to ever, be placed in a job where I had to fire people, I feel like I'll go back home crying every night. People always go on TikTok and they see how to get a six-pack, how to help you run for 5 kilometers without being breathless. Everyone gives solutions. No one focuses on who we are and whether or not that solution fits us. I think, especially for our generation, right, we have access to too many choices, and I feel like that's our downfall. So I narrowed it down to something called shift. The first thing that Gen Zs need to do is to understand.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the A to Z podcast where we turn real talk into real change. And today we have a friend of mine, Ean Tan. He's a fellow Gen Z and he has a very interesting take on personality. All right, and Ian's actually from Penang, so he's here for a few weeks. I finally got a hold of him. Ian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Elton.
Before we start, can you just give a short introduction about yourself, a bit about your history, and how you got into personality in the first place?
Right. Thank you for having me here, Elton. I'm a HRD accredited trainer as of now. So what I do is I help corporate clients basically give training to their employees, upskill their employees. And a little bit about my background is I worked 3 years in the corporate industry myself in a manufacturing company. So as HR and talent acquisition, and that's all from my background in psychology. Yeah.
And before this, we actually had something very interesting. When I went over to Penang, Ian said that Penang people are actually way more chill and their unofficial business attire is shorts and slippers.
Yeah.
What is the main difference with why is this happening actually? I don't quite get.
Yeah. So fun fact, after I came out, I helped out in a family business in a image consultancy. So what we do is you basically train about the importance of image and branding and how your external appearance affects people's impression of you, right? And somehow we started at the worst place possible in in Malaysia because for those of you who've been to Penang, you see people going out in slippers, short pants, and even business meetings is just a group of people in short pants and hopefully a polo tee. Hopefully, right? And that's giving some credit to people, but I feel like it's just a culture as well because, well, one, Penang is a very manufacturing heavy industry, and of course manufacturing requires either lots of dirty work, right? Get your hands dirty and a lot of sweating, and if not, it'll be either IT or engineering, all of which would not require you to meet clients. Right. So across the years, people slowly lost the need or see the need for any sort of professional dressing. And what more so after COVID, right? Again, it's not a surprise if you stood up and accidentally flash your Zoom call with you in your boxers. Right, and we've been subject to that for 2 years. So I guess Penang never got out of that, out of that culture. But yeah, so that's the situation in Penang, and you see that all the time.
Right, and I'm just quite curious. So, like today, I always say I'm a very casual guy. So, what does this portray? Like, wearing this and you can see I'm wearing long pants. Or what does this portray to people who see me for the first time?
I mean, I would say, we've all heard the quote, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? So it depends on who's looking at you. If you ask me, I'm a fellow Gen Z. I'm, exactly the same age as you. I understand why is it you dress like that, right? And I also know that, right now you're with me, more of a, we started off casual, we went out for dinner, things like that. So I understand where you're coming from, right? And it doesn't make that much of a negative impression, I would say. In fact, it might make a little bit more of a negative impression if you came in a suit and tie and I dressed up like that. right? That I will be questioning your intentions, right? Which is something I will be talking about a lot in my trainings and all my talks. Is very important to have intention. But if you were to just like that, if you were to meet a CEO, then that'll be very different,
Mhm.
right? Because it's not appropriate. It is not showing the other person the respect that they deserve, right? They've worked so many years to get to the stage that they're in. And of course, we understand most of the CEOs right now are people who went through that era,
Mhm.
suit and ties of professionalism, a proper gentleman's handshake, right? And to fail to mirror that experience is to not show the respect that they deserve.
Yeah, I think like right now we are in the middle of where business casual. That's really very
Yeah,
up to your interpretation of what it looks like,
correct.
and corporate has become more relaxed.
Mm.
So where is the gray area, or the line that separates between should I go for formal or should I wear something casual?
Mm, I guess the gray line would depend on what industry you're in.
Mhm.
I've spent 3 years in a manufacturing company
Mhm.
in Penang, and you have all sorts of departments. And same for any other company. If you're in finance, you would think you would need a little bit more structure.
Mhm.
So something more proper would be more appropriate.
Mhm.
But if you're IT and comfort is key to helping you spend long hours in front of a computer coding for long hours,
Mhm.
then shorts or t-shirt would suffice.
Right, right.
So the gray area still depends on the function, I would say. Yeah.
And I think one of the things that a lot of people say that, hey, what you wear is a reflection of your personality.
Hmm.
The most common one that I think we will use here is the MBTI.
Yeah, yeah.
And before we came in, I actually asked him to guess my MBTI, and he got all wrong.
All-
4 out of 4, 0.
uh,
And he was telling me that, hey, MBTI is actually not really a very good indicator
mhm.
of your personality. Can you just share a bit more about that?
So it's not that MBTI is not a good indicator of personality, but MBTI is not a good indicator of outward behavior, right? So uh, I'm a certified trainer in DISC. So DISC is another personality assessment or a personality profiling tool. I like to use DISC personally because it calculates or assesses someone's outward behavior. Which for me as a counselor or as a coach or a trainer, it's easier for me to gauge, right? But MBTI, it is more of self insight. That's why a lot of people find it more relatable
Mhm.
because it is something that only they know about themselves. How they think, the filters that how they filter information, and how they respond and make decisions inside.
Mhm.
Right. So even though I might be someone who is very loving and very kind outwardly. I care for people and I act on it. But my MBTI might not be so because maybe I make quick decisions in my head.
Mhm.
Right. So that's how MBTI and DISC differs.
Right. So you brought up DISC, and you are a specialist in DISC when it comes to delivering this kind of trainings for corporates. What would you say the biggest difference between DISC and BTI is, and what are probably some of the use cases when it comes to these two different personalities?
So what is the difference between,
Yeah.
I guess, in workplace, since what I'm trying to do in these corporate trainings is help managers realize that, or even employees, no, not just managers, to realize that either their subordinates or their superiors,
Mhm.
sometimes it's not toxic bosses. We
Mhm.
see that being thrown around a lot. Either toxic bosses or unreasonable expectations. And on the other hand, bosses are saying, now Gen Zs or young people are the strawberry generation. Not even 6-9 months of hard work and then they leave. But I see that most of the time it's just a misunderstanding of personality.
Mhm.
Because DISC is measured on basically just two spectrums. That's why it's very, very easy. One of the spectrum is whether you're introvert or extrovert. Another spectrum is whether you're a task-oriented person or you're a people-oriented person. So someone who is task-oriented might not seem very friendly to someone who's people-oriented, but doesn't mean their intentions are wrong. For example, myself, my last job before I came out as a accredited trainer or started my own business in training was in an external recruitment company. And I would say out of all the bosses that I've had, she was the hardest to work with. But after coming out, after realizing that there's much more to leadership skills and culture, it is just that she just has a contrasting personality than I do. She's a very task oriented person, and I'm very people oriented. And the way she pushed me might seem unreasonable, might seem like she's bullying me. Yeah, very toxic. But actually, should the right person be under her, that person will definitely strive. I see it like that.
If you like this video and if it brought you any value, do drop a like and subscribe and support the channel so we can bring you more episodes like this. So how in corporate, let's just put in a corporate setting since we are here right now, how do you actually identify this and actually make the right matching between, let's say, your boss and your subordinate? What are some of the key parameters or some of the traits that we're looking for that match well with each other?
Okay, maybe there will be two-part answers to that. So in terms of trying to match, usually you would try and see again, if you were to put two people of similar personalities, so let's say if I'm an S, okay, so just for the viewer's sake, S is someone who is steady, who is supportive, who is very people-oriented and introverted as well. So naturally, they'll be more comfortable with someone who is like-minded, someone who is also introverted, someone who's also a people person, right? But if you're talking about in corporate, if the whole company just consists of people who are S, then there'll be no direction. Everyone will be like, usually like either when you're having lunch with your friends in college or at work, what do you want to eat? I don't know, up to you, up to you, up to you. Everything will just be up to you. That will be a group of S people. Right? But they'll be happy with each other because they act similarly to each other. So for company's sake, you need all of them, right? A D, an I, an S, and C. But if you're talking about relationship-wise, then that's where the matching comes in. So you can't really have both, because if you prioritize the matching too much, the company will not get anywhere.
And in your previous experience with training these people, was there any instances there where someone actually knew what their DSC was and they actually made some changes and they actually worked, after that there was actual impact? Do you have any stories to share about that?
Yeah, so important emphasis that we put in our DISC classes is not about what personality they are. There's a lot of people, especially young people, they go online and they research what's the MBTI or what is their DISC for this instance, and they say, oh, this is who I am, all of you should accept me for who I am. It's a noble cause of self-identity, but I think that the purpose of personality assessments or all these self-discovery tools is not for you to impose who you are, but rather to help you understand where the area of improvements are, right? And so that was what happened in quite a few of our classes actually, where managers realized that, oh, it's not that this this staff is lazy. It's just that he's of a certain personality and he needs certain, different motivators than other personalities do than I do. Right. So he made that change quick instead of, pushing for results, pushing for data. He start first by asking, how is this staff's personal life? How is he at home? How does he feel today? And once that staff feel like, that side of him, that personality side of him is being understood, and then you push for results, the ending is very different. Yeah.
So With this one, I think another question would be, since you work with this and we are Gen Zs, we are having called a lot of stereotypes. I don't need to say anymore, you know.
Yeah.
But the previous podcast, actually, Joy came on and then she talked about we are actually seeking for purpose and trust.
Yeah.
Right. Are these the motivators you see, and what are the best ways to, get this out of, let's say, not only Gen Zs but your subordinates?
To help them discover their purpose.
Yes. Okay. I think I rephrased the question. So,
Yeah.
what is the best way to okay? What is the best way that you can motivate your employees? Right? Like after you find out their purpose, and how do you can actually create that trust with them?
Mm. I think this is where leadership is very important.
Mhm.
A lot of people misunderstand the difference between being a leader and being a manager, right? Being a manager, the word manager is, okay, in my opinion, the word manager is a role within a company's organization. A manager just means I am in charge of making sure my team, my staff reach a certain target, hit a certain profit. But leaders are more people centric, right? In fact, strictly speaking, leaders who are not managers don't prioritize profits. They don't prioritize, the company's monetary goals. They prioritize their staff instead, right? So prioritizing that pushes you as a leader to understand what each person's motivating factor is, because it'll be different for everyone. Right? Even though there's only 4 different personality types, motivating factor is different. One person might be, just 3 days ago, I had a training with one of my clients, and we were talking about finding purpose in project management. Right? So project management is about making things more efficient, right, in projects. But efficiency will not matter without a purpose. And once you find out that purpose, once you understand what you're doing it for, that will go the longest way, longer than money ever would, longer than all these benefits that companies are offering. Yeah. So if it's, one of my participants, he said that his motivating factor for everything he did, right, even at work, all the projects that he's taken, the 13 years he spent with this company is so that he can put, like, his short-term goal was so that he can bring his 4 kids to Indonesia. Just something like that can be inspiring, but it's so personal, and it's the responsibility of every leader to figure that out. And understanding personality helps, because what might be their motivating factor, right? Someone who is people-centric, that there's someone important in their life. Someone who is task-oriented, that there is a certain goal they want to reach, a certain status they want to hit.
I think there's one more question so people-centric leaders are easy to get to. But what if your boss or your leader is someone who is not people-centric, but more task and, result-centric? How do you deal with people who are on that spectrum?
Right. So I would make this comparison. Remember just now I said that a manager is a role in the company's organization.
Yeah.
So a good manager is someone who is task-centric. A good leader who is someone who is people-centric. Right? And someone who you should work under is someone who is good at both. Right? So I wouldn't, again, this is all my opinion, my experiences. I wouldn't say that he is even a leader if he is only task-centric. See, because being a leader leads. And you're not leading if there's no people. So again, people-centric. You can manage tasks, you can manage company profits, you can manage money, and you don't need people for that. So that's where the task orientation comes in.
Wow. So that's a bit, yeah, we can clip that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, talking about all this, we always talk about personality as the top level, where we're talking DISC, MBTI, those are very famous ones.
Yeah.
Recently, we actually talked about something called money personality.
Yes.
Especially when I'm also quite big into financial literacy, personal finance. What is this money personality thing? And
So money personality is understanding, just again, DISC is talking about, behaviors,
yeah.
talking about people's tendency to do something. So money personality is what is people's tendency to spend,
Mhm.
right? And based on the recent, certificate that I got in money personality, there is, 10 different ways that someone is inclined to spend,
Mhm.
or maybe not inclined, but motivated to spend.
Mhm.
Whether it is for people, even if it's for people, is it for family? Is it for friends? Is it for, your own personal savings? Is it for a legacy, a name? Yeah. So money personality kind of narrows it down to understand what is the purpose of you saving your money.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think just now you told me money is only you can only achieve your money goals if you see the progress that's being
Yes, correct. Correct.
and money psychology actually helps you make this process easier. Is that how it works?
Somewhat, yes. I mentioned that it's helpful for our generation, Gen Z,
Uh-huh.
because of all this extra stimulation and all of this visual stimulation that we're being exposed to. We are used to having instant gratification.
Mhm.
What makes games, regardless of what games, either on your laptop or on your phone, even TikTok, right, comes from the idea of instant gratification. 3 seconds you swipe, 3 seconds you swipe. You play games for 5 minutes, you get a certain achievement. So this same issue goes with money or even working out, right? I also gave you that example. Why so many people give up on working out, even though countless of people, okay, whoever's watching, you probably have made this new resolution yourself. You say that this is the year you want to lose weight. You want to lose a certain amount of kilograms, and after 2 months, you give up. Why? Because we are not used to not having instant gratification. So, money personality helps us see, okay, identify how we spend the money.
Mhm.
And with more coaching, this is why I want to use money personality to coach people to understand where they want to allocate that money to,
Mhm.
right? So, if they set a certain target to, let's say, I want to go to Switzerland by the end of this year, right? Every day you work, every day you go home, you see a change in percentage to how close you're reaching to that goal. And you feel psychologically, you feel just more motivated rather than not seeing a number, not seeing a picture, not seeing a goal.
And that's how a lot of companies they actually they apply gamification to
Correct.
even for fintech companies, hey, you save this much this month.
Correct.
All this are all playing to our psychology. I'm just curious, how does this process of money psychology coaching actually help someone to identify their habits? What do they do? What part of the psychology does it target? Does it use like
Mm,
positive reinforcement, or are we, what's happening there?
right. So, in my usual process of
Mm.
coaching, I always pair this again. One of my expertise is DISC.
Mhm.
Okay. DISC and understanding your motivating factor helps you understand why is it you have that money personality,
Mhm.
right? Because we are not we are not born with money.
Mhm.
We are not born with the skills or the tendency to understand how to manage money as well. Okay, we're born as babies,
Mhm.
and unlike the DISC, babies have personality. You have noisy babies, you have quiet babies, you have babies who cry, you have babies who are curious. That's personality. But money is so different because we are only exposed to money probably when we're in school. When we first, go to school and our parents give us that 10 ringgit or however much money to say, okay, go to canteen, buy your own food. That's the first time we ever exposed to money. So money personality, unlike all the other personalities, is something that is nurtured. So the first step that I want to, take with clients is understanding how they got there in the first place. So DISC is a good way to understand their motivation. So if someone who is an S who is people centric, most of the time, okay, maybe not most of the time, but commonly you see that their money personality is someone who is more sacrificial,
Mhm.
right? They sacrifice their own personal wealth in exchange for, a family closeness, maybe, or, just supporting your family, even though if it means you personally, you stay poor, right? Or if someone who is D is dominant in DISC, you're comparable to like an eagle in the bird kingdom, right? Someone who is decisive, aggressive, kill to get what they want. Their money personality would be someone who is more assertive, takes high risk, not afraid to invest in that certain high risk investment scheme or whatnot. So when they understand how they got to this money personality, you add that to the goals they want to achieve, then that's how you see a whole line of understanding how to manage money.
So yeah, with all this process also you have done with people, what is like an interesting story that you can share that you have done with someone? Maybe just briefly, what results did they get and how do you dissect it?
Right. So maybe I could give like a brief example because usually it would take the actual session would take
Yeah.
2 hours with cards and tools. But one that I did just over a quick conversation through dinner, just to help a friend realize, understand his money personality a little bit. So I would ask questions, certain questions such as, whether he takes high investment risk or does he prefer low investment risk? Or does he pay attention to brands when he's buying things, expensive brands, or is he more of a, as long as it's cheap, it's fine? Does he sacrifice personal wealth for friends and family? And more specifically, who will he sacrifice for? Does he know, all the financial terms like, EPF or ROI, things like that? And, for my friend specifically, he found out that he was someone who is sacrificial, right? That was one of his top scores in one of the personalities. Meant he would do basically anything, regardless of how hard he worked or how hard he had to work more. He would still always prioritize, giving it to his family if needed, or supporting his friends, or belanjaing, the friend group when it came to it, right? And there are also another two which are more dominant, okay, which we found out he was someone who is an explorer, right? Means he is someone who is willing to try new things, right? Regardless of whether it is, financial management skills or investment schemes or things to earn you more money, right? He's someone who explores. And last, can't remember what the last one was. Assertive and prudent, right? Because he's also someone who works in the financial industry. He knows and is a little bit more confident about the steps he should take, right? And he is willing to take those high risk investment steps as well, right? So this is one of the example of what he is, money personality. And if we were to go further that night, we also can identify what are some of the weaknesses, because like I said, understanding your personality is not just for you to identify who you are. It's to identify the rooms for improvement. Yeah.
Okay. Like I think what we came to conclusion is really personality is not something that we can say that, hey, this is exactly this, but it's very situational based. You might switch between different things.
Correct.
But one thing that we're all definitely on is the career progression pathway. How can, let's say me as an individual, what can I do to better understand my personality better and also maybe brand myself better? Just now you talk about reflecting your personality,
right,
in a way that helps me in my career progression.
Okay, I would say understanding your personality helps you understand where you're most comfortable in. Right. I always encourage people, regardless of whether you're a D or let's say if you're an S like me, right? The first step is to always, learn what it means to be the opposite. So in my case, I'm an S. The opposite would be a D. Right? When it comes to making decisions, or let's say if I were to ever, be placed in a job where I had to fire people, I feel like I'll go back home crying every night. Right? Because that is someone who, it takes someone who is decisive, who is, I wouldn't say heartless, but who understands the need for a task. I can't do that. I'm someone who's more emotional. I always put people before the task, right? But it doesn't give you an excuse to not do your job. It helps you understand, what job might be more natural to you, right? That's how I got into HR in the first place, right? 3.5 years in HR and talent acquisition is because I know that I'm good in dealing with people, in talking with people, in probing certain things out of interviews to understand, what they're good at and placing them in the right jobs. See, so that's how I know that DISC or even MBTI can help you in your career progression, helps you see which career is most natural to you. Okay. But when it comes to being in a corporate setting, you still have to understand the other three, personalities, because you're going to be working with them, right? You're going to be, clients are going to be all sorts of personalities on different levels as well, right?
What about for external appearance? Let's just say about branding. What are some general rules that I mean, everyone's different.
Yeah.
But what are some general rules that probably we should adhere to, that, especially in a corporate place, which makes you more professional?
I think in terms of dressing, it's already been a very, common topic, right? Understanding how to dress, um, wearing suits for certain events, black tie events, or wearing, same colored blazer and pants, right? That's one of the, common rules that you have to understand. Of course, we're getting more into a creative age, right? Where we are allowed to express ourselves as a
Smart
generation.
casual.
Yeah, smart casual, or even, colorful, colorful smart, even though people do wear full suits, you always have suits of different color, or pants that are a little bit too short and shows your ankles. None of this would probably have been acceptable 50 years ago, right? But we are coming up with different ways to express ourselves, and I think that's just the culture. It's not something that any of us can stop, right? And I think it's healthy too if we manage it properly and we bridge it from the previous generation of uniformity, of being formal, of professional etiquette, to a little bit more creative expression, right? So we still have to understand who we are meeting, right? Even if it doesn't matter what personality we are, right? We have to understand that there are certain rules in the business world right now, and depending on who is leading in that specific company, right? Right? If the CEO of the company is someone who's like us, right, in their 20s or maybe early 30s, right, jeans and a polo t-shirt would suffice, right? And you wouldn't make too much of a bad impression because we understand that that person has been through this generation as well. But if you go to someone who is 50 or 60, they've spent more years in the suit and tie generation, probably 30, 40 years, than this creative generation of I would say maybe 15 years. Yeah, so we have to understand who. Again, intention is a very, very important thing when it comes to dressing.
Right. Okay. Thanks so much. I am a t-shirt and I usually wear shorts, not pants kind of guy. But yeah, all that is good and well, but there is, in training, there is a framework that you adhere to.
Yeah.
Right. And you have been pioneering the shift framework for quite a while now.
Correct.
Can you just go through what shift is and a bit more of how do you implement it with your
So
trainings?
shift is something that I came up with myself. Okay, it's heavily inspired by something called the Wheel of Life. Okay, it's also a self-discovery assessment tool that is been there for quite a while, maybe I would say 5 to 10 years, and used by a lot of coaches all over. But I wanted to narrow it down a little because Wheel of Life has, I think, depending on the assessment itself, there's around 10 to 13 different aspects of life that you're looking into, right? Some of them are like creativity, recreation, spirituality, career, fun, finance and things like that. But I think, especially for our generation, right, we have access to too many choices, and I feel like that's our downfall, right? So I narrowed it down and gave it a catchy name, of course, to something called SHIFT. Okay, SHIFT, S stands for social, H stands for health, so emotional, mental, and physical health. I stands for image, F for finance, and T is for truth.
Oh, okay.
Right? So I want anyone of any age, actually, even though my target or my expertise would be, young people like us or early 30s, I want them to understand that before we even set a goal, right? Because a lot of times we have no problem thinking about what we want. And most of the times, what we want is early retirement,
Mhm.
to go on holidays, to be able to afford to just travel for months in a row, right? I'm sure I can safely say 95% of people our age want that. But rarely do we understand where we are. And usually that is the very thing that's stopping us from getting to where we want to be.
Mhm.
So understanding where we are socially, okay, that's where DISC comes in.
Mhm.
In order for you to make a proper social impression, you have to know what kind of person you are. You have to know what kind of person the other person is. H, people always go on TikTok and they see how to get a six pack, how to get, uh, how to help you run for 5 kilometers without being breathless. Everyone gives solutions. No one focus on who we are and whether or not that solution fits us.
Mhm.
Right? Just now I gave you the example. Everyone just works out the same way.
Mhm.
No one knows that there are 3 different body types,
Mhm.
right? And endomorph, ectomorph, mesomorph. There are 8 different body shapes,
Mhm.
right? And not all body shapes can fit into skinny jeans, even though everyone wants to fit into skinny jeans. So health, same thing, right? Image, right? Everyone wants to be liked. Everyone posts a picture on Instagram with the intention of getting, few thousand likes. But no one, deep down, do they actually reflect the image that they want to show? Right? Or is that picture actually showing who they want to be? That's where we touch on image. So each of these aspects, and of course, finance, we've already touched on money, personality.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone wants to retire. Everyone wants to have enough money. But do they know what kind of personality they have and whether they are optimizing the way they spend and the way they save?
Mhm.
And last but not least is truth. That's where I touch on purpose, because on all 4 aspects, you have to understand why you're doing those things. Right? Why do you want to make a good impression? Why do you want to save money? Why do you want to get a six pack?
Mhm.
And once you understand the why, that's what drives you all the way to your goal.
Is it a reason you put this in a particular order, or is it just an acronym that?
I kind of did it more for the acronym, but it kind of worked out too, because all 4, even though there are 5 letters, the first 4 letters are kind of like defining characteristics.
Mhm.
And I wanted to leave T for the last because that's the most important one.
Mhm.
Right? T is the driving factor for all 4. Right? T is what pushes for that transformation, right? Which is, also starts with T.
Yeah.
Right? All 4, I would say, is equally as important. Right? You can't have a good social life without a healthy lifestyle,
Mhm.
right? Either physical health or mental health. How many times have we heard of, people losing friends because they were too negative, or they are not in the right mindset, or they're not, you know? And how many times have people lost friends because they weren't portraying the right image?
Mm.
How many times have we had friends who say, "Oh, did I seem like I was angry, or did I seem like I was rude? I don't think I was." That's where a difference between, understanding social cues and the image that you portray.
Mhm.
Right? A lot of people know their personality, but a lot of people don't know what is the image that they're showing, or what is the image that other people see.
Mhm.
Right? And finance, of course, all of it plays an equal part in our lives,
Mhm.
and the defining motivating factor is the T.
Mhm. Like how what does I'm quite curious now of how does this program look? And for someone who's going through this program, how is it structured?
Right? So it's very in the development stage,
Uh-huh.
right? I just came up with this. I just came up with an assessment online. I haven't published it yet, but I'm trying to incorporate it into all of my training programs. Because I want to make a difference, at least one, I would say one life at a time,
Mhm.
right? I think being a corporate trainer really gives me the exposure to, you know, people of different backgrounds, different age in different companies, and then I'm able to teach that program that I want to use. Let's say, for example, project management.
Mhm.
Right, that's one of the most recent trainings I've had. Instead of just focusing on the technical skills of like Scrum or Agile or Kanban, things like that, they are very famous right now. I want to focus more on how to implement, let's say, project management in your social life.
Mhm.
I mean, your S and your H, I, F. All of these also need project management. Ever so often, we are being sent, if you're in a corporate world, we're being sent by managers to learn things for the benefit of the company. And because we go into that training with that mindset, all of a sudden we're not interested to learn because it's not for us, it's for a company's profit. Okay. But if I'm able to go in and just change their mindset and say, no, take this skill, use it at home first. Because once you use it at home, once you turn it into a habit, once you turn it into an identity, right? Instead of having project management skills, you become a good project manager. And if you're that at home, for sure you're good at that at work. So always start from home. Yeah.
Right. And for all these trainings, you mentioned that you actually train a lot of young people. And as a Gen Z podcast, I cannot not ask this. Uh, what are actually companies missing when they're trying to attract, motivate, or retain their talent?
Mm, okay. If I were to list the top two, in my opinion,
Mhm.
right? Because I come from Penang.
Yeah.
Penang is a relatively much smaller place compared to KL in terms of business. I know there's a lot of manufacturing sites in Penang, but I would say culturally, it is also a little bit smaller. So one of the main things that I feel is a big mistake, or rather an oversight, is that companies try to make their staff or make their young people feel like family. Right? They always say, "Oh, we're a tight knit family. We share things with each other. We have lunch with each other. We, you know, uh, chat even after office hours." Right? And that comes across as toxic instead most of the times. Gen Z people think that you know managers are doing that in order to get more after office hour tasks done.
Mhm.
Right? And I've talked to a lot of HR managers, and
Mhm.
they are actually implementing this in an effort to make them feel belong. But if I were to give a metaphor or an example, it's like, would you, it's like companies trying to do that, companies trying to be their staff's family. It's like a girl coming to you, knowing you already have a girlfriend and asking to be a girlfriend again, right? Everyone who goes to work has a family at home. What for do they need a family outside? Right? Unless you're telling me, of course, the family at home is, dysfunctional, or, that's a very rare case, right? But why do you need another girlfriend if you already have one? So companies are trying to push that, oh, let's make him feel belong, let's all be a family, but it often backfires, right?
Yeah, 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 I
Yeah.
can't agree more.
Get
That's a
you?
very good analogy.
Yeah, it's a good example.
That's a very good example.
Right.
Uh, I think also someone actually put regarding Gen Z on my previous post. Pros and cons of Gen Zs. Pros, they are fast, quick learners. Most of them are confident.
Yeah.
Cons, no reply, ghosting, no means no. So I think it's not so much of that we want to ghost you. It's just that we have, we have our own girlfriend at home that, we need to take care of,
Yeah,
and then you don't come and,
exactly. Exactly. So it's most of the time it's not that we can't, it's that we don't want to. Now, the a point I want to make is that so far it might have been working, right? Maybe for the past 5, 10 years, this family thing or making them feel close or reaching out to them after office hours only works because we're in the Asian community. Right? We have to also understand this in a global context, yeah. Even though uh we have to understand that us Asians, we are a little bit more conservative, we're a little bit more introverted, right? So this would not have uh, played well in maybe a Western community where people are much more for standing up for themselves. And right now, you're already seeing the backlash,
Mhm.
right? On LinkedIn, on all these career platforms, people are already speaking out publicly, quitting jobs and posting it on LinkedIn with no remorse whatsoever. This and this so company did this, right? It's only because we're in the Asian community that we don't dare to speak up as much, right? But I feel like if this keeps up, it's gonna go on a it's gonna go over a very steep cliff,
Mhm.
right? And it's gonna push us Gen Zs either to keep this trend of quitting after 6 months, after 9 months, or maybe even losing faith in the corporate world altogether. Right? You have more entrepreneurs and business owners, even our age, more than 50 years ago.
Mhm.
Why? Because we're losing faith in the corporate culture. So if companies want to, you know, make sure that the company has the longevity that they want, they have to first understand what the future, their future directors, their future CEOs, their future workers want. And it's not another family.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I'm always trying to actually find the middle ground. So I work with a lot of corporate. I think you too also.
Yes,
And
of course.
we are all, as much as we lash out and everything, there's a few of us that actually a lot of us are actually trying to find what's the middle ground, what's a good way to, merge these two worlds together.
Yes.
What are some ways that us as Gen Z can do in the corporate world to better manage expectations and also manage what the company wants and what we want and maybe communicate it in a
Mhm.
better way?
That's why I think it goes hand in hand with the first half of our talk.
Mm.
The first thing that Gen Zs need to do
Mhm.
is to understand themselves, right? Because once they understand themselves, once they understand what they want, only then they can understand the company that best fits them,
Mhm.
right? Their lifestyle, their personality, right? If someone who is a high D dominant or high I influential, right? Influential is someone who's comparable to a parrot in the bird world, talkative, charming, then they might strive in the sales industry, right?
Mhm.
But again, you have to understand yourselves in order to find. So I feel like that's the middle ground, that it takes two to tango, right? Employees need to want to understand themselves. They need to want or at least know what they want from their lives. And companies need to provide them the opportunity to figure out. Right. That's why I came up with Shift. That's why I came up with training programs to to basically help them discover. Right. I promote training programs in guise of project management in mainstream topics that companies are looking for. Right. But I want to change the narrative. I want to change the intentions of these programs to help them realize that project management is not just for work. It's for you to use at home. It's for you to use for the things that you want to achieve. Right. And when you bring that up, naturally they'll start to think, oh, what is it I want to achieve? Whereas if you keep putting your employees through, project management, time management, leadership skills, communication skills, and you don't help them realize that all these skills that they learn is if the employees assume that the skills that they learn is only for work, and in between you and me and everyone else, how far down is work in our list of priorities? If we had a choice, right?
Right.
Exactly.
So I would say like if this wasn't my own business, I'm probably working somewhere else.
Exactly.
Work probably won't be on the top of any of my priority
Exactly.
list.
It will be reaching to even say if it's in the top 5, right? But companies are pushing employees to attend all this upskilling, all these training programs, and expecting them to use it on their fifth or sixth or seventh item in the list of priorities. Oh, again, tying it back to leaders and managers, right? What companies are doing now are being managers, sending their employees to training programs in order to up their productivity.
Mhm.
But what leaders should do is to upskill their people in their personal life. And once they tick off, let's say, first priority on the list is their children, and then their wife, then their life, and then eventually they'll come down to work. But I say that it's better late than never. If you
Mhm.
give them a skill to only apply on the fifth, they use it once, they never use it again.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I think it comes back to that term. How you do one thing is how you do everything.
yeah, exactly.
Right. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on. So how do we get in touch with you? What are your socials? Just share. How can we reach out to you? Let's say you want to get on the training program.
Right. So, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm starting to be a little bit more active on LinkedIn because I really want to promote uh, this 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 initiative that I believe in. Right. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Just type Ean Tan. I'm there. EAN. Right. Don't type I. I know it's a little bit different from the normal spelling, but my name is EAN and Tan. And same goes for Instagram.
Mhm.
And if you reach out to me in any one of those platforms, and I'll be more than happy to respond.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me out
Yeah,
there.
you'll be welcome here anytime. So yeah, connect with Ian, EANTAN. I'll put his socials down below. LinkedIn, Instagram, connect with him there. I'm Elton. I'm your host for A to Z podcast, and we'll see you in the next one.